You are listening to Hit Play, Not Pause, a feisty menopause podcast for active, performance-minded women. I am your host, Celine Yeager. Each week, I bring you advice from athletes, scientists, researchers, and other experts to help you feel and perform your best, no matter what your hormones are doing. This show is a production of Live Feisty Media. Hello, strong, feisty women. I hope everyone is well. So this week, I had the honor of sitting down with a very strong, remarkable woman named Tonya Oxendine. Tonya joined the United States Army a year after finishing high school, mostly to run away from a very difficult childhood and abusive family. Unfortunately, she left one abusive situation only to find herself in another, and the first half of her nearly 30-year Army career was marred by sexual abuse and harassment. At the time, she bottled it all up because she was afraid that if she spoke out, she would lose everything. And she was good at her job, and she otherwise loved her job, which included being a paratrooper, and she loved serving her country. But at some point, shortly after a deployment to Afghanistan, everything came roaring to the surface, and Tonya was forced to reconcile with it. She got the help that she needed through the Wounded Warrior Project, and she is now a Warrior Speak spokesperson, making it her mission to help women just like her get the help that they deserve. That's important for many, many, many reasons, obviously, and it's also important because menopause. Women who have been through trauma are much more likely to have a more difficult menopause transition with more severe symptoms. We've done 2 shows on that topic alone. Also, severe menopausal symptoms, such as hot flashes and difficulty sleeping, can heighten existing post-traumatic stress symptoms for women who have suffered trauma, which puts women like Tonya in a vicious cycle, to say the least. Female veterans are especially at risk for past trauma and may often feel like they just have to tough it out, which can make all of this worse. Tonya herself struggled with severe hot flashes and mental health symptoms that resurged during her menopause transition, and she, like most women, didn't realize these connections between her past experiences and what she was going through. So we decided to talk about all of it, because as we say all the time on this show, there is no greater way to address stigma and shame than by shining a big bright light into the corners where they lurk and bringing everything out into the open and being transparent. None of us is alone, but there's no doubt that many of us often feel alone. In fact, when you look at the statistics from the Wounded Warrior Project, you see that 44% of Wounded Warrior Project women warriors indicate that they have experienced sexual assault. That's a rate that is 2.5 times higher than females in the general United States population. 57% have reported experiencing moderate to severe depressive symptoms. More than 51% have presented with moderate to severe PTSD. 60% have had severe anxiety. And unsurprisingly, the vast majority, 87%, feel like those outside of the military do not understand their experience. So it's just important to put it out there that help is available. And I will put a link to the Wounded Warrior Project in the show notes. This show, obviously, gets pretty heavy, but it also gets remarkably light. Tonya is living proof that even in the darkest of tunnels, there can be light on the other side. And I really, really appreciate her sharing her story, and I'm sure it will help others. I hope you enjoy and get as much out of this as I did. I would also like to take just a moment to invite anyone listening who has a female friend or a loved one who is in the service or who is a veteran, who may be going through the menopause transition herself. Share the show, share our resources with them. We all know how hard it can be to do the activities and the sports that we love when the symptoms come raining down. And the military is a very active place. Military veterans are very active people. So let's spread the word about how we can work with our changing physiology and manage our symptoms to keep on keeping on. Okay, before we get to it, as always, check us out on Instagram and Facebook at Feisty Menopause. Sign up for my free weekly menopause blog at feistymenopause.com. And come on, check out our membership. If you like these conversations, you can have several of them a month, one-on-one time with experts in our Level Up Menopause membership. That's at feistymenopause.com as well. Thanks so much for the continued great reviews and 5-star ratings. We've hit 500 now, and it really, really does help me continue to get great guests for the show. So I very much appreciate it. Finally, a very quick thanks to our sponsor, Bonafide. I've heard from a number of you who have found hot flash relief from their product Relazin, and I have sung the praises of their vaginal moisturizing product Reverie many times. It helps me stay comfortable in the bike saddle for hours on end, and I also really love their hair and skin serums. So thanks, Bonafide, for all your support. You've been there from pretty much the beginning, and I really appreciate you. All right. Enough of me. Let's hear a few words about those awesome sponsors and get on with the show. Excellent. Well, Tonya, I have really honestly been looking forward to this conversation since we hooked up. I want to first thank you for your service and thank you for the incredibly important service that you continue to provide with your voice. What you're doing is so important and so essential. I just appreciate you on many levels, and I wanted to put that up front.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Before we get to some of the heavier ground to start with, I really want to hear about being a paratrooper, because how did you become a military parachutist?
Well, actually, I started kind of late. Most people, when they become a military parachutist, they go from basic training. They've already made their choice, and they go straight into airborne school or airborne training. I, on the other hand, had never really knew all the things that the military had to offer. So I was about 33 years old when I did this. So I was in a junior leaders course, an Army course, and I saw this soldier, and I said, "Damn, he looked good." I mean, he looked good anyway, but his uniform, his uniform and his maroon beret and his boots, they shine bright. You know how, like, when the sun hit the lake just right? It was that kind of brightness coming off of his boots. I mean, they were spit shine, like we say, right? And I said to myself, I don't know what this man do or who he is, but I want to do and be whatever he's got going on, right? And when I got back to my unit, because the course was probably about 2 months, about 2 months long. And when I got back to my original unit, my home station unit, I said, "What is this airborne paratrooper stuff?" And it was like, "Oh, you have to apply and get accepted." And I was like, "Well, where do I sign up?" I didn't know anything about, you jump out the airplane. I mean, it, kind of layman's term kind of makes sense, but what it all entailed, right? And oh my goodness. So I wasn't ever like afraid of heights. And the reason I wasn't, because I'd never been up anywhere high, right? And so, after I got back to my duty assignment or my duty station, I said, I want to do this. And I filled out the paperwork, got accepted. A few months later, went to Fort Benning, Georgia, where they do airborne school. And the training started from there. And you have to train on this 250-foot tower first. You do all these jumps, and they're teaching you how to jump out of an airplane and that kind of thing. And then it's time, after you've done that training, it's kind of like 3 stages, kind of like grade school. You got elementary, middle, and high school. So you go to these different stages. And once you get to high school, that's when you have to jump out the real airplane.
What are you landing on in those first scenarios?
So in the first scenario, you're in a 250-foot tower. So it's almost like a zip line, if I can. Yeah. And so when you land, you don't really land, because this thing is helping you down there, giving you the illusion of when you're jumping from that height. You know what I'm saying? So, but all the safety equipment, everything is there to keep you where you don't even, until it's time to jump for real, for real. So now you have to put all that into practice, because you don't get this zip line. You just have to depend on your parachute to open and all that. But all that, those safety things, and they teach us and train us all of that in the course. And so in the initial training, we have to jump 5 times, 4 day jumps, 1 night jump. Well, all 5 of mine were night jumps because my eyes were closed tight. So and then the object of that is to go to an airborne unit, and I went to the 82nd Airborne after my training, and just continued to jump. I have 77 jumps under my belt. total, and I became a master jump master, and where now I trained the soldiers to jump, and was pretty much, just in charge of the aircraft, making sure everyone was safe and giving out the commands and all that stuff, where I became the trainer, so to speak. Yeah.
Wow, that's yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
I've always I bungee jumped twice in the same day,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I've always been intrigued with that idea of sort
Yeah.
of parachuting, but
Yeah.
I also just don't tempt fate more
Yeah.
than a
Yeah.
certain
And
amount.
and then those jumps are 1,250 feet. So the highest that I've ever jumped was a tandem jump. And that was 13,000 feet. But that was
Wow.
tandem. Yeah, I was, on some, that's a tandem
Yep.
jump where you're under, someone's on top of you, under them. And yeah, but that was fun too. I mean, and I know you say, were you scared? Hell yeah. Right? Because that's not necessarily normal. You just do it. The more you do it, the more proficient you do it, the more confident you become. And of course, the reason for doing that is to protect and defend our country in case we have to jump into if there's a war going on, and jump on the
Right.
battlefield and that kind of thing. But yeah.
Wow. Did you ever sustain any injuries doing that?
Oh yeah, I got a few injuries. So on our equipment, we have now listen, I was gonna say, no, you done got it wrong. Static, our release assembly here, right? So you have to, it's this like these big clips here. So you have to hit those canopy, the release assembly, so that your parachute, because once you land on the ground, and you do land on the ground, there's certain techniques to keep your feet and knees together so you don't hurt yourself.
Yeah.
So you have these big clips here, and you have to pop the clip, which is really easy, and then the parachute won't catch air. Then it'll deflate, so to speak. Well, the wind was blowing so hard that day. The wind was just blowing so hard, and I could not find my canopy release assembly. I mean, because I was getting drug across what we call the drop zone, is just this really open field that we jump onto during, peacetime. And I was getting drug across the drop zone, and I was trying to find my canopy release assembly, but I needed to stay calm. And I was like, oh shit, because I don't need to get, because you can get dragged around. And I finally popped that canopy release assembly, and I'm telling you, it was scratches and because I was in a pile of bushes and just drug and bleeding and this. And then the soldiers, they come running out. We got you. I was like, get away from me. I can make it back by myself. Because you want to. But yeah, and I broke a bunch of bumps and bruises. I broke my tailbone. Once. That was really hard. Again, the winds picked up, and I landed, kind of crooked. But yeah, that was the worst, was bumping my tailbone. Breaking my tailbone. But the other stuff is it comes with the territory, busted lips and bruises and that kind of stuff.
I understand.
Yeah.
I'm a mountain bike racer. I understand all of that.
Yeah.
Well, that is amazing. So let's rewind and give a bit of your history. You had to say you had a rough childhood is an understatement. I've listened to some podcasts and read your history, and you have a history of sexual abuse and just not a good situation. And you did join the Army, as my understanding, mostly to run away from that childhood. What were you looking for in the Army? Like, why specifically were you going to the Army?
Yeah, and I had no idea. Again, I wanted to go to college after high school, but again, we didn't have anything. We were poor. I didn't know about, that you can get student loans, and this guidance counselor never called me into the office. I was a pretty good student too, stayed on the honor roll, but just never got called in the office and got that counseling that I needed. And one day I was walking across town to one of my friend's house, and the recruiting stations were along the way. And I just walked in the first door. And the first door happened to be the Army's door. I could have been a Marine if it was the first door. I could have been an airman if it was the first door. But the first door was the Army. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to school. I have to get away from where I'm at. I'm just going to join the Army. I didn't know at the time that anybody in my family was in the Army except my uncle. He's a Vietnam War Purple Heart recipient. But I didn't know at the time because we're not a military family, so to speak. But yeah, when I found out more about the Army, doing my, going back to the recruiting station and visiting with the recruiter, I was like, this is my savior. Like, this is what I need to do. I can provide a better life for myself. I can get, all these people can help me. We can be a team, all the stuff that's talked about, and which is true, right? I can get some peace, I can get some love, I can get some guidance, I can get some goodness, I can run the hell away from this stuff. It was better than where I was at. So yeah, those are my reasons for leaving. I knew I was going to leave anyway. That was just that was the vehicle that really took me away from that. I mean, I was going to leave that area, period. But that vehicle took me away, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah, and let's talk about that, because
Yeah.
this is, the irony of that, and I do want to talk about the dichotomy here, because we're going to talk about some dark things, but you also have
Right.
obviously some positive things to say about all of your experience in the
Yeah.
military.
Yeah.
You endured sexual assault and
Mhm.
rape, I believe, at the hands of senior leaders in basic training,
Yeah.
and my understanding also is that would continue on and off for 15 years until you got to a rank high enough to be like, this is not happening.
Right.
So I listened to you talk about this on the Higher Ground podcast, and I can put a link to that in the show notes, because that was a very moving, very great
Yeah.
show. And you explained very understandably, you didn't tell anyone because you're scared, you're young, it feels like your fault, you're going to lose your job, you don't want to go back to where you came,
That's right.
and you're
That's
also
right.
good at what you're doing, right? So
Right.
you don't want to like get thrown out of that.
Yeah.
That's all very understandable. My question, I guess, is where do you put the trauma when you're in it? Because when you speak of your services, you just did, you talk about these positives among this trauma and these negatives.
Mhm.
How is that compartmentalizing happening?
Yeah. Didn't know at the time that I was compartmentalizing it. I mean, that's a lot of syllables. Compartmental,
Yeah, it is.
right?
I know.
I didn't know
I
at the
know what I'm
time that
saying.
right. I didn't know at the time that's what I was doing. Again, for me, being there for my soldiers, and look, here I am again. I can feel it coming on, right? Because nobody was ever there for me. And I don't blame my mom. She was trying to do the best she could, but what the hell she had. She had it rough as well. If I had it rough, she had it worse, right? So for me to be able to take care of somebody else, that's where I got my strength, So it didn't matter, because guess what? I was already used to that bad shit happening to me. I can handle it, and I'm tough. I know how to, get rid of that. But what made me stronger and better, and to just push it away, I guess, to compartmentalize it, was that because I loved my job. I loved my soldiers. I became great at what I was doing. I became a great paratrooper. I became a great leader. And the more I took care of people, the more all that other stuff didn't matter. The more I became more mentally tough, the more I became, my mental fortitude just kicked in. I was already that, but the Army just said, you know what, we're going to add a little bit more seasoning to that, and we're going to build you up, and we're going to make you taste better and gooder and all that stuff, right? So that's just how it's happened. I wasn't thinking about, oh, I need to push this to the side. It just became natural for me to do. It just became natural for me to do, because as a leader, and as the type of person that I was, and especially as a Black woman and being a senior leader, it was tough, and I couldn't act out at times, to be stereotyped or whatever. And again, I didn't think about those things. I just know that I had to be a tough person. And what made me that way was to continue to serve and take care of people. That just made me better. And I didn't complain. I did what I had to do. We have a term in the military, say, suck it up. And I think sometimes we get that, and I'm just going to speak for myself, that we get that misconstrued with, oh, you have to be vulnerable and not show, if the weakness and not showing weakness type of thing. But for me, sucking it up made me stronger for somebody else. I didn't realize that I was, pushing this stuff down until, and I know we'll get into it until later on. But I think I'm happy that I did, because me being the strong, mentally strong person that I am, and what I learned and what it taught me, it helped me to be a better me and to help me be a better leader. I hope that kind of makes sense.
It does.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I guess, I don't want to spend, you could spend a whole podcast talking about this, and
Yeah.
I don't want to, I don't want to do that. I
Yeah.
mean, I guess, the question is, it from what I understand just from talking to other people and from reading about this and listening, that
Mhm.
was a time when that culture was more, there was more of that abusive culture inside, right?
Yeah.
It, as you were going through it, when you talk about helping other people, were you able to then sort of protect some other women coming up
Mhm.
as well?
Mhm. I'm going to answer that. I'm going to say yes, that I was, because I could see the signs before they, of course, before, maybe a man was noticing what was going on. I would notice that that a man may be saying the wrong thing to a young female or to another woman. I would pull her to the side. Hey, I got you. Come talk to me. Again, nobody wants to. We all join for certain reason. I didn't want to lose my job, and back then, I don't want to, I guess you can say back then, but sometimes when you're in a position, you have to do what you have to do to survive. You have
Yeah.
right, and to protect yourself and to protect others. Should I have spoken up? Yeah. Did I? No, I didn't. Now we are.
Yeah.
So this is the time, right?
Yeah.
We didn't then. We know better. We do better. But yeah, I'm gonna say that I hope that I did save some young women. Didn't know about any men at that time, but I'm going to say that I hope that I was able to save some young women. Um, Again, we just got to have a supportive team, because that's really a powerful tool, and to speak out about it, to combat this stigma and this shame of sexual assault, sexual abuse, and just all that stuff. We just have to continue to do that. And I'm definitely stronger. I was strong then, but I'm definitely strong enough now to do it, because I ain't scared of nobody. Hell, I jumped out of airplanes for a living.
I
I'm
love
not
it.
scared. That's right. That's right.
I love it.
Yeah.
So your first deployment was Iraq, correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I listened to you speak about that on the Higher Ground podcast too. And what really struck me, Tonya, is how that pain is still right below the surface. You talked about losing a soldier, and just listening to you, like, fighting back tears all these years later, um, it was really, really moving. And that was 2012, and, there's just a quote, I'd read in something that you wrote about this or was talking about this. It said, "It hit all at once in 2012 during the deployment in Afghanistan. The childhood memories, the memories of sexual abuse in the military, the memories of death and suffering I saw, all this stuff came crashing down. I could not take it anymore." Can you talk a little bit about, like, what happened in 2012 that brought all this to the surface?
Yeah, Celine. Yeah, we had so many heroes um, that came through Kandahar's hospital. I was in Kandahar in Afghanistan, and just the devastation, and just the mangled bodies. And these, I'm talking about young. I can say kids, right? I mean, they're adults, but just young men, and mostly men. Uh, 18, 19, 20. And all I can think about, was my sons. And if my sons were in this position or in this situation, who would be there for them? So every time we got a call that we had a hero coming in, both me and my commander, we made sure that one of us was there, because we did not want somebody to say, "Oh, I'll just sleep in on this one because somebody else is going to go." We made sure that we were going to be there. And because although Staff Sergeant Francisco Martinez, the first soldier that I lost in Iraq uh, in 2003, November 4th, 2003, by improvised explosive device on his convoy coming to deliver the mail,
Oh.
just to make sure soldiers were, getting something from home.
Oh.
And Sergeant Martinez was a big guy. We called him a heavy drop because he hit the ground on an airborne paratrooper. He hit the ground. You could feel it. You could feel it shaking, and I mean, just an amazing man, an amazing young soldier. It was just devastating. And although he was in the convoy with a few other people, as his leader, I was not there for him. So I vowed, when me and my commander went to Afghanistan in 2012, we talked before and said, "Hey, we're going to be there for those soldiers that are coming in." And we did that. And we went to what we call the ramp ceremonies. If a soldier unfortunately lost their lives, we do a short ramp ceremony to honor their service before they are flown back to the United States of America. So yeah, just all that and seeing those young men just brought back something. It just clicked. Was like, I guess this was the time. I mean, it was a bad situation, but Staff Sergeant Martinez, all those, gonna be blunt here, stank ass men, my mom's boyfriends, touching me and bothering me, my fucking cousin touching me and bothering me in the Army, my drill sergeants hemming me up in the office and, you know, coming to the rooms and different. It just all came back because it was so much devastation. And I guess that devastation for me that I had compartmentalized, it just came to the surface. Now I still had to, while I was dealing with that, and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? You got, you know, rocket propelled grenades going off. We going out on convoys, but I still have to stand up and be the leader that I am. At that point, for my definition, and I know the definition of it, I was not going to necessarily show that the weakness, because if I wasn't confident in myself, or if I thought that my mental fortitude wasn't strong enough for my soldiers, for me, that was weakness for me. That doesn't mean that you are a weak person, just some weak things that, you know, may happen in your life that I could not at that point bring to surface. So I had to hold on and maintain until, you know, I got back to the United States of America. Thank goodness for a few of my peers, my buddies. I didn't talk to them about it, but, you know, we would hang out together on our breaks. We would go to lunch together or dinner together. And so that was some relief for me, knowing that my soldiers were well. That was some relief for me, knowing that when we went out on these convoys, that we were trained. That was relief for me. So I didn't have to, you know, bring that to surface at that point, because it wasn't the time for that. I had to make sure everybody else, along with my other leaders, that those people that needed the help then, those heroes that needed the help then, that we gave them the help that they needed at that point. Because I was strong enough to hold and to bear that pain and that adversity. And for me, that's courage. That's the strength within us, you know.
Amen. Amen to
Yeah.
that. So Tonya, when does it become time to take care of that is underneath the surface for you?
Yeah. The time came when we came back from deployment. We redeployed in 2012, and I was assigned to the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. And I remember this day. Wasn't there long. I don't remember how long I had been back, but it was still 2012, because it was the end of 2012, I believe. But one day I was looking out the window at my office at the Pentagon, and I said, this is the day that I'm going to go for a swim. So I told my buddies, I said, you know, it's a nice day outside. I'm going to go for a swim. And so I got in my car, went downstairs in the parking garage. I got in my car, and I'm telling myself the whole time, this is the perfect day to go for a swim. Now, mind you, I cannot swim, but I was going to drive my car off a bridge because I knew I could not swim. But I ended up, I ended up at Fort Belvoir Hospital in Fort Belvoir, Virginia, at the mental health counter. And I said, I need help. And so that's why I said all these things that happened to me, all the bad things, the terrible things that will have somebody in the corner curled up in the fetal position, it just made me strong enough, because at that moment, I may not be here. I would have left a legacy of suicide for my sons, and I did not want to do that, because they were at the forefront of my mind. Martinez was at the forefront of my mind. All those young soldiers, those young men were at the forefront of my mind, and I wanted to live so that they could live. And thank goodness for my mental fortitude and my mental strength. And I was able to go there and get some help. And at that point, at Fort Belvoir Hospital, with my mental health physicians and the VA there in DC, the mental health physicians. And at that point, I was introduced to Wounded Warrior Project, which carried on some much needed treatment.
How did they help?
Wow. Several different programs. You know, we have several resources and programs that we offer to our warriors, but the Warrior Care Network is what really is a part of what helped my mental health, or improve my mental health. And that's a program or resource where we have 4 world-renowned hospitals that concentrate on post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury, and military sexual trauma. And it's a 2-week, 3-week program, and you're there on campus, and you go in and you get all this extensive treatment and extensive counseling and therapy.
Yeah. And was it Was it mostly talk therapy? Was there any medication? I mean, did they
Yeah,
take that
all of
route?
that. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a gamut of things. Medication. I forget some of the things, and I should have had it written down.
that's
But
that's fine.
yeah, I mean, but it's just a gamut of mental health, scientific treatments that help the veterans. They're and I was in Atlanta at the Emory Veterans Hospital.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that
When
was
did
one of
you?
the main, I'm sorry, that was
No,
just one of
that's
the
okay.
main ones. And then our talk program, and that's a one-on-one telephonic mental health support line where you get a counselor that calls you every week, and you discuss your, how the week is going and those type of things. We have Project Odyssey, well, that's a venture-based program. We have an all women's Project Odyssey. We have couples Project Odyssey. And I volunteered with our national campaign team when I got strong enough to where I would go out and spread the word about how Wounded Warrior Project helps veterans and their families with our resources and our programs.
When did you know that you had sort of turned the corner?
When did I know that I had turned the corner? Well, it was a 9-year battle.
Wow.
Yeah, a 9-year battle. With PTSD, anxiety, severe depression, I was prescribed antidepressants, sleep medication, pain medication, mood medication, and I mean, just tons of meds. We had to get all that, stable. And like I said, it was a tough battle. But now, I get to live this wonderful life,
Oh.
and I get to live a wonderful life now because I had to fight for my mental health, and I had to fight for it in a healthy way. So it took a while, but Wounded Warrior Project was there with me the entire time. I mean, still to this day, I talk to my talk counselor, Seneca. Still to this day, my counselor with Emory, Dr. Mark Burton, we may reach out every blue moon. So Wounded Warrior Project, we don't give up on who we help. We are there from the beginning until the end, and to include family members.
That's
Yeah.
tremendous. So let's pivot to menopause. So
Uh-oh.
yeah, where are you in the menopause transition?
Ooh, child. Mm. I don't know if it's safe to say or whatever, but again,
You
about
can
3
say whatever
stages.
you want on this show.
It's like school, like 3 stages. You got elementary, middle, and high school. Probably all of them is bad, but I'm in the postmenopausal stage.
Right.
Yeah. So postmenopausal stage. That's where I'm at. Finally got them 12 months of no cycle. Cause honey, I was like, what is you doing back here? Get away. Yeah. Terrible. Terrible. But these things women have to deal with, but honey, because mine started in 2018. I was about 50, 51 when it started. It started in 2018-ish time frame. And like I said, finally got those 12 months, and I had no idea kind of what was going on because, I'm not, we don't really talk about this. You hear about it, but you hear like, you think of these old ladies and it, honey, no, that thing got me, even though 50 years old, but that thing got me. And I was sitting at my desk one day and I said, ooh, what? Ooh, ooh. Almost broke my wrist trying to fan that heat off. But yeah. So I think postmenopausal stage.
What were your symptoms like besides the hot flashes? Like what else were you dealing with?
The hot flashes, that was the most overwhelming and exhausting for me because they were
Yeah.
so unpredictable. You just never knew when. Even to this day, if I take this computer into my room, my air conditioner is on 69, it stays on 69. My ceiling fan is on high, and I have a side fan bed because like now my skin is, it's warm to the touch. I can stand all these clothes or nothing. But I don't think I had a whole lot of symptoms like some women may have. I do now have the weight gain, some of the weight gain, but I work out a lot too, so it's not so noticeable, hopefully. I think maybe that, some of the depression that has something to do with, some of the depression. I do believe that, especially after, talking to you and going through some things and with my OB doc, think that contributed some of the depression, but I have an IUD, progesterone IUD, and then I wear a patch as well, the estrogen patch, and that's giving me so much relief.
Oh, good.
It's giving me a lot of relief. Yeah.
Did you know before you alluded to some of the conversations we had before this one,
Mhm.
were you familiar with the research on adverse childhood experiences and trauma with menopause before we
Not
spoke?
not at all. Not at all. Yeah. And I know, like we're talking now about this, Celine, I know, and I do realize that things are, discussions like this are getting better, right? For the medical field, scientific field that, comes down to us, the user or
Yeah.
the patient. When I first started, maybe a lot of information wasn't out, when my docs were going, trying to figure out what was going on. But now different things are being discussed. I was not aware of this part, how we're discussing now with maybe some childhood trauma could be a cause of some of the symptoms, meaning, just the effects of menopause. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And for those
interesting.
who are who haven't heard the previous shows, I've done a couple shows on this that
Mm-hmm.
adverse childhood experiences, trauma, and it's all because of how it affects like the HPA axis, your stress
Mm-hmm.
response,
Mm-hmm.
that you you are more easily in that sort of fight or flight, and that becomes more difficult naturally when you get into menopause and cortisol
Right.
levels are higher, and it can
Mm-hmm.
just like all those experiences, you know, s- the medical studies show lead to a rougher time
Yeah.
in menopause.
Yeah.
And it makes, it does make sense when you think
It
about it.
does. It
Yeah, but
does.
a lot of people don't put that together.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that this is important because it's another opportunity, right, to help other women, because I got the Wounded Warrior Project report that Tracy Farrell had sent me,
Yeah.
and 44% of, women warriors indicated experiencing sexual assault.
Right.
That's 2.5 times higher than general population. 57% have experienced severe depressive symptoms or moderate
Mm-hmm.
depressive symptoms, anxiety. And unsurprisingly, the vast majority, 87%, feel that those outside the military do not understand their
Yeah.
experience. And I am sure, like, that makes 100% sense
Right.
too. Because
Right.
honestly, how can we?
Yeah.
Um, so how can we help veterans like yourselves, as well as, younger women who are in active military now? Like, how can we help them through their their menopause experience when they get there, and get the help they need, even, beyond menopause?
Yeah. You know, uh, with the statistics and all the information that you got from Tracy Farrell, we do know that women veterans can face some of the same things that their male counterparts face, that some of our male counterparts face. We face that and more. I can personally speak for that myself with, having PTSD and anxiety, but some women are twice as likely to have those, mental issues or illnesses versus men. But despite facing all those tremendous challenges, women warriors, they still remain resilient and continue to seek the support. And that's what we have to do. We have to continue to seek the support, the resources, and connect with other female veterans. Because regardless of, male or female, we all want to have and deserve to have a sense of belonging. So, and this is, and doing this, Celine, we thank you for this, and with Wounded Warrior Project shining the light on, discussing this topic. That's how we do it. That's how we make the connection. That's how we seek support, because now the information is getting out there that you do have a team here with you that can help you and support you.
And if somebody wanted to, whether, if they're a veteran and they think that they are going through, a bad perimenopause, or they're having like some of the things that are more
Mm-hmm.
nebulous, like their anxiety is coming up, maybe they're getting
Right.
depression, rage, like all the things. Would they go to the VA? Are they well versed in sort of women's health at this point, to help them through their menopause journey?
Yeah, absolutely. They are. The
Yeah.
Veterans Administration, your primary care doc, and other VSOs as well, Veteran Services Organization. But if a veteran, I would say seek help with the VA, right? Wounded Warrior Project. I don't know if you can see this logo here behind me, but that's what we
Yep.
do. We fill in the gaps. We're here to carry you when you can't carry yourself. You can contact us at Wounded Warrior Project at woundedwarriorproject.org. We not refer you out, but can help you and give you, advice and stuff for the VA. But highly encourage our veterans, our warriors, to use the Veterans Administration. again, the docs are well versed in this, and if you're listening, you can talk to them about this and bring it up, because you have to care for your health as well as the docs care for your health, and we all work in this together too, because we want our warriors to be, to live that wonderful life like I'm living now. It was a tough 9 years, and I still have my bad days, but Wounded Warrior Project right there, I got it on right here. This is what we do. We carry each other, to help. And and we're here to honor and empower our veterans, for those who pledge to protect and serve our country. That's what we're here for.
Talk just a little bit more about the Wounded Warrior Project and like the mission, and because you said it sort of fills that gap, but I know how you came into it. How does someone else come into it? Like what is the mission statement of Wounded Warriors, and how do people find themselves in the Wounded Warrior Project?
Yeah, so to honor and empower our warriors, that's our, mission statement. And that's exactly what we do, because we want to respect them. We see the value in them. That's how we honor them. And then we want to empower them so that they can now, have control over their lives and get the treatment and the resources and the help that they need. Again, contacting woundedwarriorproject.org. As simple as that. They'll be connected to our resource center. And from there, we find out a little bit of information about them and what their needs are. It could be, they may have their benefits, but they may be looking for employment. They may be looking to connect with other veterans, women veterans. We have alumni programs that offer women veterans peer support groups, where women veterans can make a connection and build camaraderie in a community. We offer mental health and wellness programs tailored for each veteran, financial wellness programs. We just go on the website. We have several programs, and those programs, we may have 20, we may have 25, we may have, less than that. It depends on what the warriors' needs are.
Gotcha.
All of our programs are based on what the warriors' needs are.
And I will definitely put a link to that in the show notes so people can find it easily. This is going to come across as a really dumb question, but
no.
What qualifies as wounded?
So a veteran post 9/11. So when we think wounded, sometimes we think of the visible wounds like an amputee, or you may see a burn or something, but we have our invisible wounds as well. Like for me, post-traumatic stress disorder. Some soldiers have traumatic brain injury. I have, victim or, military sexual trauma. So we have our visible and invisible wounds. And so they're wounds and illnesses.
Gotcha. No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So what do you do? Like, what is your, most of your time spent doing now?
Well, I am so damn retired. And I live in sunny Tampa, Florida, and I have a great life. But I will tell you that because of Wounded Warrior Project, and they made such an impact on my life, that I came out of retirement and went to work for them as a spokesperson, motivational speaker, where I get to travel the world and share my story and be an outspoken champion or advocate for veterans, for mental health, for physical health, and for military sexual trauma.
Oh, that's great. That is awesome.
Yeah.
It has been an honor to have you on the show and to speak to you. Is there anything that we have not covered that you wanted to express to the audience?
Well, I'll say that, throughout my 57 years of life, that I've learned a lot. And I don't know it all, but what I do know is this, and that is that life doesn't give you a second chance, but it will give you a fresh start. So
that's a great mic drop moment. Yeah. I will stop recording. Well, that's our show. Come on back next week when I sit down with women's health and fitness coach Baz Moffat, who is also the co-author of the Female Body Bible and the co-founder of The Well, which provides health and training resources for females in every stage of life. We have a great conversation about adjusting training and nutrition through the menopause transition. So come on back for that one. And until then, as always, stay feisty. You've been listening to Hit Play, Not Pause, a feisty menopause podcast for active, performance-minded women. I'm your host, Celine Yeager. The show is edited and produced by the strong, talented, and amazing women at Live Feisty Media. Follow us on social media at Feisty Menopause, And please help us spread the word. Screenshot and share this episode on your social media channels with the tag @FeistyMenopause. Share the show with your friends. And please subscribe, like, review, and rate this show wherever you get your podcasts. Word of mouth and good reviews make it easier for other listeners to find. Thanks for listening, and as always, stay feisty.